Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists podcast, episode number 504. I'm your host, Andrew Johnston, and thank you so much for being with us today. We have a great episode. This episode's a little bit different than maybe some of our other ones. In this episode, I have Rachael Wintersteen as our guest, and we kind of chronicle her story. There's a lot of things that are important takeaways from this, the drive, the curiosity, the continuing to get better. But we also talk a little bit about what the progression of a dental assistant could be. Because I think a lot of times that if we didn't come from dentistry, or if we're only been maybe in one practice or two practices, we have an idea of what a dental assistant is in our head. And then we see something like this where, she's had opportunity for leadership, she's had opportunity for advancement, she's had opportunity in specialty, she's a treatment plan coordinator now. Like, there are so many things that are out there for dental assistants. And at the very, very end, I actually even asked her thoughts on if a dental hygienist would be a good treatment coordinator. So be sure to stick to the very end. You want to hear the answer for that. As always, thank you so much for your support. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, tell a friend. And with that, on to the interview.
A tale of two hygienists.
Listeners, welcome into the interview portion of the podcast, joined today by Rachael Wintersteen. Rachael, thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So just a quick little edit note for our listeners. Rachael and I, we go back a long time. Best friends, most would say, actually. And she was a dental assistant in one of the offices that I was at. You were a lead. You were in charge of dental assistants. Okay. All right. We had plenty of hijinks, but also lots of opportunities to learn and grow and become leaders together. So I'm grateful that you're taking the time to be here. So thank you for that.
I feel so appreciative of and loved that you reached out to me. So
yeah. Well, so let's talk. Let's first of all, listeners, we have a lot of things we want to talk about. The dental assisting, dental hygiene stuff. I think we're going to kind of touch on that. I want to talk about treatment coordinating. I want to talk about ortho. I want to talk about pretty much all of the things that you're really good at. But before that, do you mind just giving us a quick background of who you are and where you're coming from?
yeah, so I'm Rachael Wintersteen. I've been in dentistry, going on, let's just say 2000 since 2009. I've been in dentistry. Seen lots of changes, but mainly my role was dental assistant. I made the transition over to the leadership role probably about 10 years ago. I'm hailing all the way from Portland, Oregon. I work for a pretty decent sized company and have been here for going on 14 years now. So I know the ins and outs pretty well for a company this size. Made the transition from general dentistry to specialty about 6 years ago, and that's where I find myself now.
Now, let's talk about the change, because I feel like you've done a lot, and I think you're one of those people that I know that just kind of gets kind of an itch sometimes to okay, what's next? All right, what's next? What's next? What's next? You and I have actually done a lot of dental related trips, going to the different conferences and stuff. Boston and Chicago, I think that you went, and New York. We took Tony's class back in the day or whatever. Yeah, that was fun. So you're one of those people that your brain, I feel like, never stops trying to get better. Where do you think that comes from?
I just have this curiosity about me, and the more curious I get, the more I just want to get my hands into things. So naturally, I just kind of gravitate towards it. And I do see some similarities with my sister, so maybe there is a family component to this. There's just this drive to want to be better, and dare I say, maybe the best.
You're striving for
Within
greatness.
my circle.
Well, but that's the thing too, is I feel like, some of the things that we both have experienced, whether it's gonna be in hygiene, whether it's gonna be assisting, or whether it's gonna be the offices that we worked at, is we look at some people and, we want them to get better, but they don't want it for themselves, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've noticed?
Yeah, and it's not unique to like the office I was at, well, where we were at. But I'm like, this can't be it. Go over to a different office, it's pretty much the same. So I don't know. What drives people to dental assisting is that not a lot of schooling, right? And it's pretty decent money for how fast you can get jumping and running, especially depending on state to state, right? Washington doesn't really have a lot of the same like barriers of entry versus Oregon, where you do have to get into like an accredited school, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and so I think that draws a lot of people in where it's just something they can do in the meantime, you
Hmm.
know?
Do you feel like so kind of on the national stage and a lot of like the people we talk to on the show and whatnot, they all have the same kind of perception where there's a absolute shortage of dental assistants. Are you guys feeling that where you're at?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Is it worse than it has been historically, or has it kind of always been a little bit like this?
Mm, from my perspective, it's kind of at its worst, you know, with just a whole bunch of other economic issues going on. It just doesn't make a lot of sense for how much effort is perceived to have to be put in to it, right? Not a
But
lot of
it's
payout.
But there's I mean, as far as pay goes, I mean, it is pretty good. I mean, don't tell me exactly what you make, but, like, what is the range now? You're in specialty, which is a little bit different, but and Pacific Northwest wages are gonna be different than Wyoming, we'll say, or
Right.
something like that, but what is kind of like the range and how do they determine the range, the pay scales?
Within our company, the pay scale is really just like different levels, like one, two, and three. Right. Level one is your average sterilizer, right? They're not expected to know a lot of dental terminology, which is fine. And you don't really technically, I don't think you need to go to school to be a sterilizer in Oregon. And I know for sure in Washington you don't. You just have to pay that registration fee.
Mhm.
And then of course level two is just your average, probably like straight out of school dental assistant is pretty competent in what they can do. And then bordering on level like higher level two into level three is like tenure and specialty, right? If you're a general dentist who's been doing nothing but that for 20 years, you're gonna be on the higher end, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And specialty, mm, it does tend to be on the higher end, even if you don't have a lot of experience.
So when you say higher end, like, what's like a pay range that they would
Sorry.
expect?
Uh, I think level 1, you're probably looking at, like, anywhere from $15 to $20 an hour. Level 2, I wanna say maybe, like, 24, going into, like, 32.
Wow.
And then level 3, you're looking at, I wanna say 33, 34, all the way up to 40.
You know what kills me about that? I'm sure that has changed significantly, since the big pandemic and all that kind of stuff, but the interesting thing is, like, those are hygiene wages in most parts of the country. Like, that is absolutely insane,
I know.
and so when we're talking about these, especially the lawmakers and the people that are influential in dentistry, they're all saying, like, "We have this big shortage of assistants," and, it's like, "Well, it's because we don't pay them enough," and I'm like, "Well, I mean, for the little bit of barrier to get into the profession, it's not that bad, but there's gotta be something that's not keeping them in. Like, once they're in, we're not putting the cap on the bottle and keeping assistants in. So what ends up being, like, kind of the bigger gripes of, like, why are they coming in and then just bailing? Like, is it a job satisfaction issue? Is it just a workplace toxicity issue? And I know it's kinda hard to speak on the whole entire profession, but to the best of your ability.
Yeah, from my perception and what I have heard, a lot of it usually stems from workplace toxicity. I mean, you're working with humans. You can't exactly escape humans.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so you have people that just bust out their work and get things done, know what to do. And then you have the people that just do the bare minimum and yet
Mhm.
somehow they're often paid the same. So there's like that inequality that is pretty common. with dental assistants. With dental hygiene and even dentists, oftentimes there's a lot more schooling involved, right?
Mhm.
Whereas dental assistants, not really. And so it really comes down to like who can just bust their butts, really.
Now, as far as like, again, working for a bigger corporation like you do, it's, there's a lot of protocols and things like that that are kind of established. But let's talk about like maybe like a private practice setting. Who's responsible, I guess, for helping create that culture within the dental assistants? Because so, for example, the dentist is busy doing their stuff, and technically they're supposed to be in charge, right? Especially if it's a dentist owner. If it's an associate dentist, maybe it's a little bit different. But I mean, it can't be an office manager that's in charge of the dental assistant that's not doing anything. So how is like what's the accountability look like then if there's no oversight?
Well, I would imagine in private practice, there's a little bit more control of who they're letting in, who they're vetting,
Ugh,
right?
ugh.
Oftentimes with bigger corporations, they're like, great, you got the credential, come on in. You can hold the suction, okay, come on in. So with private offices, it probably does come down to the dentist and slash office manager and having to maintain that because their hiring choices would be a bit more personal.
But wouldn't but so far as far like you, job satisfaction wise, being in a private practice probably isn't gonna be your cup of tea though, because I feel like you'd get bored, right? There's only so far you can go up in a private practice. You've made the change from general to ortho now. Tell me a little bit more about that change. Like how hard was it to learn a new skill, a new trait, and kind of what the work actually entails?
Mhm. The trade over from general to ortho wasn't too bad. All right, I slowly was getting everything taught to me by the orthodontist at our practice, which I'm immensely thankful for in hindsight, despite me giving that pushback initially. Slowly over time, I gained that new level of confidence to just jump right in when the opportunity came over in Portland.
Mm,
So making that transition was a little bit easy. I am of the thought process of more knowledge to me is better. So I love dipping my toes into a little bit of everything. I've even helped out our oral surgeon when he was here and they needed help. Not so much endo, because that's not my cup of tea, but I would do it, right?
mhm,
I'm just always willing to jump in. And so with orthodontics, what kind of drew me in a bit more was I'm basically like a little provider, my own provider. I have a column of people that I see, and those are the patients that I'm responsible for the day.
mhm.
I don't really have help. I break down my own room, I put in my own notes, and turnover is like, 15, 20 minutes, there's a new patient coming in.
So you prefer the fast paced part about it?
I guess the variability is not so much unless you get like extreme cases, which they'll come and go. Some people have some more severe issues, which from our side is like, oh, great, something fun and exciting. Maybe not so much for the patient, but you know, slowly as you get closer to the end goal and people see they're a little bit more straight, you're like, "Yay, good job. Keep it up." So in the beginning, it's always kind of fun, but watching that slowly kind of go through.
The perception sometimes of like what a ortho assistant does,
Mhm.
and look, this is coming from a hygienist, like take it for what it's worth, right? It's like it's the same repetitive task over and over and over and
It
over again.
really is.
And there's like the bonding debonding stage, and then it's just like, okay, here's a new freaking wire and some rubber bands. And then also the
You're not
perception
wrong.
is okay, okay, we'll dig into that in just a minute. The part two perception is that the orthodontist doesn't really do any of the work. It's always the assistants that do all of the work. How do you know at work has to happen? Because I mean, obviously, there's communication that happens for every single patient for every appointment. You guys aren't just going in and, you know, mindlessly just, like, working on patients without any oversight. So how does that part happen?
There's that foundation of expectations from the orthodontist, right? And how willing they're able to give up their work. There's some orthodontists that like to do a lot of the work, which is fine, right? And then there's some that are very hands off. And so in our team, it's a little bit of both, right? There's that general oversight by the orthodontist. There's this series of wires that we work through. In the beginning, they're really flexible, right? If the teeth are ready to go into that next wire, the doctor feels, trustworthy in our skills to make that call of, yeah, I think the patient's ready, and then whoop, pop it in, right? So there is still that level of like trust and communication, which is nice about orthodontic teams. Like once you build that and you have that trust, that is somewhat satisfying.
I'm curious about one thing you just said there about the orthodontic team. Working at like a larger practice, do you feel like it's like your team is, I guess, more easily able to be a team within like the bigger group? Like, so general stays over there, then ortho stays over here. We have our ortho lunch break table or whatever, where we all have lunch together, and then general's over there. Or is it more integrated? Like everyone just kind of just does whatever they're going to do. They'll go out to their car and take a nap anyway.
When it comes to the actual labor, it's very divided. Once we clock in, we completely forget about general. But as soon as you clock out, we're pretty well integrated. We all mesh pretty well with each other.
Let's talk about the transition from chairside ortho into what you do now. So what does your day look like now?
My day consists of performing case presentations for people who are about to get their braces or clear aligners. I also do I pretty much am in control of the consultations in the sense that I'm like the first person that the patient will see. We do a little bit of intake, we take some x-rays, we take a scan with an iTero scanner, and then doctor will come in, she will do her exam, just basically letting people know like how long treatment would take, the components that it might entail, right? So they're not left in the dark. A person who's got class 2 malocclusion of like, 10 millimeter overjet, right? Well, maybe not that severe, but they may use a forceps appliance. They may use rubber bands. They may need extractions, things like that. This is all something that doctor like really briefly gives them an idea of what to expect. So her component is actually really brief.
Mhm.
And then I come in and do a little bit more full blown explanation for the consultation. Our consultations are almost an hour long.
That's great, though. I mean, because I feel like that gives the patient an opportunity to actually ask all the questions that they might have.
Yeah. Not only do I do like patient education regarding treatment, but insurance. So it's helpful having the dental assistant background because a lot of treatment coordinators aren't dental assistants. They're not clinicians. So
So that's your responsibility then also is talking about like financing and pay and all that kind of stuff? Or is that okay?
yeah.
Is does that part ever get awkward? Clinicians aren't really great about talking about money with patients generally.
It can be. However, there's a stigma around orthodontics where it's expensive. And so people go into the consultations thinking there's going to be a huge number. And oftentimes there is. There's no getting around that.
Yeah.
But I do try to be somewhat sympathetic depending on the patient's reactions.
Like, so I assume you see younger kids like early intervention kind of situations as well, right?
Yeah, it depends on school of thought with orthodontists.
Tell me more about that. So do you guys don't practice a lot of it, or you do, or
We do. Some of the things with younger patients though is managing patient really. How old are they? You don't really want to be starting treatment on a 6-year-old even though they have their first molars. There's not as many adult teeth. There's been this increase though of getting a lot of like 7 to 8-year-olds to like start treatment now even though the issues might not be severe enough. So, is the issue in her mind severe enough to where they do need treatment? And then, of course, we would treat. But if their teeth are a little crowded, you know, kids go through this ugly duckling phase of huge adult sized teeth on tiny little children faces.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
we do some like early intervention work, but not as often as what I think a lot of private offices are doing.
One of the things that we have right now kind of going across, I saw this, I think yesterday in one of the forums. Hygienists are not really looking to get out of dentistry, but maybe they don't want to do exactly the job of dental hygiene anymore. And part of it, I think, we had an episode, I think it was a couple weeks ago, but it was Dana Palladino was on, and she was talking about how she tries to get, before people go into hygiene programs, she tries to have like at least a call with them or a talk with them and be like, hey, this is what to expect, not only for the program, but this is what the career actually is. Because a lot of people are like, oh, cha-ching, short work weeks. I'm gonna be able to, travel and do all the stuff and whatever. And then they get in and they're like, oh, but I'm not happy doing this job. And so yesterday I saw one that was a flight attendant. She's like, all right, just celebrate my 1 year anniversary. If anyone else wants to be a flight attendant, let me know. My company's hiring. They only hire twice, whatever. All that to say is, it sounds like the level 3 at your company pays pretty decent. It's not going to be as much as hygiene wages. But would you think that a hygienist might find a treatment coordinator position interesting? Would they enjoy it possibly?
I think they could. The real like rut that I find myself in is the repetitive nature of it. But again, it's kind of the nature
That's
of
dentistry though,
ortho
right?
to begin with. But,
Like, what kind of personality traits should they have though? If you're like, hey, you have to be able to do this, what would it be?
um, having a decent social battery
That's
of
good.
just talking with patients. I spend all day talking to patients, so all sorts of different levels, right? They might not all be chatty, but I find my job is to give the patients as much information as possible to make an informed decision about themselves and whether they feel comfortable moving forward.
So I feel like a lot of hygienists do a lot of chatting and polishing at the same time. I feel like social batteries for hygienists for a lot of them, maybe not the ones that you know specifically, because this guy and like your other friend, like we don't do so well maybe with the social battery part, but
Mhm.
I think hygienists generally are great at that.
Mhm. Yeah, I would say so. At least my experience with them. I don't
Yeah.
know some of the newer hygienists coming out now, but it's
Oh, buddy,
cool.
that's a whole nother conversation. I'll tell you some stuff offline here in a minute when we get to that. But right, Rachel, look, I mean, I'm sorry I got cut off our time. Thank you for being with us. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Um, so welcome to your first podcast episode, maybe. I don't
Ooh, I it was the experience of a lifetime. Thanks, Andrew.
Okay. I love your lies. All right. Bye. All right, listeners, that is our show for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to reach out to all of our guests. Give us a follow on social media. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you have a minute, head over to our website and sign up for our newsletter. All right, we'll see you on the next one. This has been a production of Endeavor Business Media, a division of Endeavor B2B.